Have you ever felt like no matter how much effort you put in, something always seems to break right when you're about to rise? Like the universe is testing whether you truly deserve to soar? Sometimes we look at our own cracks, our failures, mistakes, and wounds, and see only weakness. But what if those cracks were never meant to hold us back? What if they were the very reason we were built to rise higher? Let me share a story that captures this truth. The story of a little boy named Jack and his broken kite. In a quiet, sun-soaked town surrounded by rolling green hills, lived Jack, a curious boy with big dreams and an even bigger heart. He wasn't rich, nor did he have the fanciest toys like other kids. But there was one thing that lit up his world: kites. Whenever the wind blew across the rooftops and through the trees, Jack would stop whatever he was doing, run outside, and gaze at the sky, watching those colorful shapes dance like birds. To him, flying a kite wasn't just a game, it was freedom. Every year, the town held a kite festival where children from every street would gather in the open fields to see whose kite could soar the highest. The air would fill with laughter, cheers, and the rustle of paper wings. Jack dreamed of being part of that celebration, of watching his kite touch the clouds. So for months, he saved every little coin he could find. He did odd jobs for neighbors, carried groceries, washed bicycles, whatever it took. Slowly, coin by coin, he filled a small glass jar until one bright morning, it was finally enough. That afternoon, Jack ran to the marketplace, his heart racing. He stopped at a small stall where kites of every color hung like jewels under the sun. But his eyes were drawn to one, a bright red kite, gleaming like fire against the sky. It was simple yet beautiful, with a golden tail that shimmered in the breeze. He handed over his hard-earned coins and held his new treasure close, grinning from ear to ear. The big day came. The entire town buzzed with excitement. Families filled the field. Children ran with strings in hand, and the air was alive with color: blue, yellow, orange, purple. Each kite fighting for space in the vast blue sky. Jack clutched his red kite tightly, his fingers trembling with excitement. He looked up and whispered, "Today, you and I will touch the sky." With all his heart, he ran. The wind caught the kite, and for a moment it began to rise. Jack's chest swelled with pride. But then, crash! Out of nowhere, a larger kite swooped down and slammed into his. The red paper tore, leaving a jagged hole right through the middle. Gasps turned into laughter. "Your kite's broken! It'll never fly now!" shouted one boy. Others joined in, pointing and giggling. Jack's smile faded. His hands dropped. The string dangled loosely as his kite fell limp to the ground. He stared at the torn paper, his heart breaking right along with it. All the excitement, the saving, the dreaming, it suddenly felt useless. He turned away as the laughter echoed behind him. For a moment he believed them. He believed he was broken too. But what Jack didn't yet know was that this fall wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of something far greater. Jack sat in the grass, his torn kite lying beside him like a wounded bird. The laughter of the other children still echoed in his ears, each word cutting deeper than the last. He wanted to pack up and go home. He wanted to pretend this day had never happened. His dream of flying high had crashed before it even began. For a moment, all he could see was failure. But then, through his sadness, a memory floated into his mind. His father's voice. He could almost hear it as clearly as if he were standing right beside him. "Son," his father used to say, "strength isn't in being perfect. It's in what you do after everything falls apart." Those words had always sounded nice when things were easy. But now, sitting in the dirt with tears in his eyes, Jack finally understood what they truly meant. He picked up his kite again, gently running his fingers over the torn red paper. The hole looked ugly, jagged, and beyond repair. For a while he just stared at it, thinking maybe the others were right. Maybe it really couldn't fly anymore. But then something inside him refused to give up. Maybe it was his father's words echoing louder now, or maybe it was that tiny spark of hope that refused to die. Jack thought to himself, "What if I try again? What if broken doesn't mean the end?" He tore off a small piece of paper from his notebook, the same paper he used for his school drawings, and gently patched the hole from behind. It wasn't perfect. In fact, it looked a little messy. But as he tied the string back and tightened every knot, he felt a strange new kind of determination rising inside him, stronger than before. Jack stood up, brushing the dirt from his knees. The other kids were still flying their kites, their laughter blending with the whistling wind. He took a deep breath, gripped the string tight, and began to run again. His heart pounded in rhythm with his footsteps. At first, the kite wobbled uncertainly, fighting against the air. Then something incredible happened. The wind, instead of resisting the hole, flowed through it. The very flaw that everyone said would make it fail now made it lighter. The kite steadied itself, then began to climb. Higher, faster, stronger. The crowd noticed. The laughter faded into silence as the little red kite, the one they all said would never fly, started to rise above them all. It danced with grace, twisting and turning, catching every gust perfectly. The patch fluttered slightly in the breeze, almost like a battle scar. And yet, it was beautiful. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. His heart swelled with joy, and a wide smile spread across his face. The very thing that made his kite broken was the reason it soared higher than the rest. The same kids who had mocked him now stood speechless, their eyes following the red kite climbing toward the clouds. Jack shouted with pure happiness, "Look! It's not broken, it's unstoppable." His voice echoed across the field, and for the first time that day the laughter had turned to awe. Jack didn't just fix a kite that day. He discovered something powerful about himself. He learned that being broken doesn't mean you're defeated. Sometimes it just means you've been reshaped to rise higher than before. As Jack's red kite soared higher and higher, every eye in the field followed it. The children who had once mocked him now stood frozen, mouths open, unable to believe what they were seeing. The laughter that had once filled the air was gone, replaced by silence and wonder. Even the wind seemed to whisper encouragement, lifting the red kite higher with every gust. The golden tail shimmered in the sunlight, tracing brilliant patterns in the sky. Jack's heart raced as he tightened his grip on the string. He couldn't stop smiling. For the first time, he wasn't worried about whether his kite looked perfect or not. He wasn't comparing it to anyone else's. He wasn't scared of losing. He was simply flying. The sound of the wind rushing through the hole, the tug of the string in his hands, the sight of his kite rising. Everything felt magical. The same brokenness that once filled him with shame was now the very reason he felt free. Jack's father, watching from a distance, smiled softly. He had seen the entire thing unfold, from the moment the kite tore to the moment his son found the courage to try again. There was pride in his eyes, but more than that, there was joy, because he knew this wasn't just about a kite. This was a lesson his son would carry for life. When Jack finally stopped running and stood still, his kite was a tiny red dot dancing among the clouds. The crowd had gathered around him now. One boy finally spoke, his voice soft and unsure. How did it do that?" "It was broken." Jack turned to him, his face glowing with pride, not arrogance. "It is broken," he said with a grin. "But that hole? It lets the wind flow through. It makes it lighter. I thought it was ruined, but maybe it just needed a little change to fly right." The kids looked at each other, unsure what to say. One by one, their expressions softened. The same children who had laughed at him began clapping, cheering, and calling out his name. Jack's chest filled with warmth, not because he had won, but because he had proven something much bigger. That day, Jack learned that broken things can still fly. In fact, sometimes they fly better. The rip in his kite wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a doorway for the wind to enter, a reminder that flaws don't make you useless. They make you human. As he packed up to leave, Jack looked at his red kite one last time. The patch he had added looked rough and uneven, but to him it was perfect. It told a story of falling, fixing, and rising again. He didn't just see a kite anymore. He saw himself. Years later, Jack would remember that day whenever life tried to tear him down. When things went wrong, when plans fell apart, or when others doubted him, he would think of that broken kite that refused to stay on the ground. He would smile and whisper, "If I could fly then, I can fly now." And maybe that's the real beauty of life. We spend so much time trying to hide our cracks, our scars, our imperfections, thinking they make us less. But what if they're exactly what we need to catch the right wind? What if the pain we've been through is the reason we'll rise higher than before? Jack's story isn't just about a kite. It's about every one of us who's ever felt broken, laughed at, or left behind. It's about the strength that's born from failure and the magic that happens when we refuse to give up. So, if you've ever felt torn, remember Jack and his red kite. The world may call you broken, but the truth is, you're just being shaped to soar. Now I'd love to know, what part of Jack's story touched your heart the most?